We all want to have better relationships with others and with ourselves. Welcome to the Relate Great podcast with Jonathan Sherman and friends. I'm a marriage and family therapist, and I know a lot of cool people who know a lot of cool relationship stuff. I'm excited for you to get to know them now, too. Before I started my podcast, I played around with a few different ideas. One of the ideas was calling it the Heavy Mental Hour. And I like the catchiness of that name. However, it doesn't really fit on brand with greatness in relationships, whereas Relate Great does. So anyway, but this is one of the first test episodes I did with my colleague and buddy Gary Klein, LCSW. And so the intro that you'll hear refers to it as the Heavy Mental Hour. So even though I no longer use Heavy Mental Hour, I liked the podcast itself, and it was a good trial run for what I wanted to create in future episodes. So here's a little shout out and call back to this fun time with my colleague Gary Klein. And I have a few more recorded with him in the can that I will edit, and we'll hear from him more in the future. All right, here we go. The Heavy Mental Hour. We simplify the crap in your life with humorous enabling for free. All right. Welcome to this episode of the Heavy Mental Hour, where rock and roll and mental health meet. Your hosts are Jonathan Vlad the Impaler Sherman, licensed marriage and family therapist, and Bad Uncle Gary Klein, licensed clinical social worker. The Heavy Mental Hour showcases real therapists talking in real people language about real heavy mental health, relationship and psychology issues in a lighthearted, rocking, smart, funny, and insightful way. So this week, Gary, that's you. What are we talking about, man?
First off, you're a very good reader.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It all started when I was a child.
A child? Nice. Well, let's see. Everything boils down to, in my opinion, either being stuck or not stuck. So anytime someone comes into your office or my office, they've only got one problem each time, every time, and they feel stuck.
Everything.
Doesn't matter what it is.
You bring it all down to that.
If people aren't stuck, they don't come in. They get stuck, they come in. We get them unstuck.
They don't come back.
They don't come back.
Until they get stuck again.
Until they get stuck again, or hopefully have enough skills so that they don't need to come back, because that's really the goal.
So we're kind of the AAA roadside service of the mental health field.
Right.
Or the healthcare field.
Right. I like that.
AAA.
Yeah.
This episode of Relate Great with Jonathan Sherman and friends is brought to you by, well, me. Yep, I'm my own sponsor. Naturally, it takes time, money, and resources to make this podcast happen. So to support it and to support you and your family, I've created the 7 Principles for Building Strong Families online masterclass and workbook, which is now available at relategreat.net/strongfam. We all have families, and we all want to figure it out better. So enroll today and learn how to resolve conflict, improve communication, and create secure attachments with your partner and your kids. This self-paced online course and workbook will help you, your partner, and your family overcome problems and create truly great relationships that last a lifetime. For my podcast listeners, get a 20% discount using code STRONG20. Get the book, take the class, and start today at relategreat.net/strongfam.
Before we went live,
Uh-huh.
we were joking about there was an online preacher years ago in Michigan, and the ad would go something like this. That's right, folks. For $39.95, you too can have salvation.
Amen, brother.
And so they were, for $40, you could buy your way into heaven.
Nice.
And the reason...
And that's a bargain these days. Even then it was a deal.
Even then, it was $1980, so it'd be a little bit more, but it's still a good deal.
Even then a bargain.
And then for proof, you would get a certificate you could put up on your wall, just in case.
It would be mailed to you?
Yeah, in case anyone didn't believe you. You could go, I got proof.
Suitable for framing?
Right, that's right.
A certificate of salvation.
That's right.
It says, I've been saved on this date.
On this date, yep.
Nice. Signed?
Yeah.
Gold seal, probably?
I didn't have that much money. So, but
I'll tell you what, for $40, I would save you.
You really?
Yeah, you're worth $40 to me. Your soul is at least worth $40.
And do I get the certificate too?
Totally, man.
Really, with a signature?
With the gold seal.
Okay. I'm liking this.
It's not too late, Gary.
So we were talking also about people who would pay the $39.95 were probably feeling stuck.
Mm-hmm.
maybe I'm not going to heaven. Maybe I'm a bad person inherently.
Right. There's no way out.
There's no way out. And then this guy for $40 is showing them a way out.
Along the lines of the certificate.
Yeah.
You were also talking about a certificate that maybe we could offer to our listeners.
Right.
Yeah.
Be a little bit more money.
Oh, yeah, definitely. We're not doing $1980 here.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a new economy. And there would be, at this stage, two kinds of certificates. One would be proving that you're certifiable and that you have major issues. That way you are not responsible for your actions.
Oh, yeah, right. So like what? Where would that be useful?
Well, all right, so the wife comes home and says to her husband, you told me you'd mow the lawn or you'd do this and you do that.
Right.
And then he just kind of point at the wall at the certificate and say, hey, it's not my fault. It's not my problem either.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So abdication from responsibility.
Okay, this just in. Ski passes. When I was a kid, you could buy a 10 ride pass. You'd punch it.
Yeah.
And then you'd get to ski that day. Or for that run, I guess it was. Yeah, that run. We could do this. We'd give them like a 10 excuse punch pass.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that way the money keeps coming back to us after 10.
Nice.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Right. And I mean, really, can you put a price on the abdication of responsibility in your life?
I don't see how you could.
I think we could.
Yeah.
$49.95.
Well,
$50.
$50.
A certificate. I mean, and this is going to be on nice quality linen paper.
Right.
Gold seal, both of our signatures, right?
Right.
Which alone, in that itself, is worth the $50.
That's right.
Let alone what it will allow you to do in your life. That's priceless.
That it is. Well, and then also we could give them a certificate, sell them a certificate that says that they're healthy.
Oh, yeah.
And then that way, if someone says, oh, come on, you've got that crappy attitude, and you point your certificate and go, I don't think so.
I'm the healthy one here.
Right.
This clearly must be your problem.
Right.
I'm certifiably not bat crap crazy.
Right.
You are. Yeah.
Right. And then we'll have to come up with something else, because if both people get certificates, war of the...
Right. They could cancel out.
Right.
No. If they're the same certificate, right? So if we're both healthy, then there's no one to blame.
Well, okay, then you could triangulate and bring a third party in.
Right.
You could gang up on that person.
Triangulation.
Right.
The wacky therapy game.
There you go.
Excellent. I like it, man.
That would actually
There's money in this.
That would actually be really fun to come up with. What you just said, the wacky
triangulation, the wacky therapy game.
It seriously would. I was just thinking of this yesterday. It would be fun to come up with a game called like either borderline or narcissist, and then you could draw cards that would give you a free contradiction or a free lie, or blame the person to your left. And then the goal, if people really got good at it, would be to break out into a fist fight because they're so angry,
right?
And they think they're going so nutty, and then they could go, "Oh, that's how these families are functioning. It's this nutty."
Right, and we could sell like accessories that go with it. Like you could have your own gaslighting kit. A little Bunsen burner, some matches. And just keep turning the light down, the flame down a little bit. Say, no, it's not getting dimmer in here. It's just as light as it's always been. There must be something wrong with you.
Okay, and then the little baby monitor thingies, so then you could whisper something and they would hear it in the next room and then you deny it.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, this is fantastic.
This is really good stuff.
Untapped market right here.
Right here.
So if we have any product innovators who or angel investors who'd like to fund all this and do all the work for us, then we get all the money.
Right.
Because it's our idea.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
I'm liking it.
So all this ties into stuckness because these things that we're doing, the certificates or the salvation certificate, are ways out of the problem. Either there's no way out, I can't solve this problem, I can't take responsibility, I don't know how to take responsibility, or people are blaming me for problems, so now I'm healthy because I have the certificate.
Right.
These are some ways of doing it. Maybe not as effective, but I think we should make up the certificates and sell them anyway.
I do too. Just in case.
There's enough idiots out there, someone will buy it.
It's...
Hopefully some of our readers are really stupid enough to send us money.
I'm glad we don't have any listeners at this point. But yeah, what a great safety net. We don't have to alienate any
listeners at this point because we don't have any to alienate.
Except Mom. Mom, we're just kidding.
Sorry, Mom, you're great.
Yeah. I like that, the safety net idea. Yeah, it's like tax, This is $49.95. Oh, plus the tax.
Right.
Right. Plus, don't you want that safety net?
Right.
Don't you think the Savior would want you to have it? Guilt, so we can make them stuck there.
That's right.
Yeah.
We could definitely add a spiritual component to this.
Right.
Right.
A little bit of shame to keep them stuck.
Right.
Right, yeah.
I wonder if that's been done before. That model's been tried.
Maybe on a global scale for millennia, I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. So it might be that we just stick with our method and not try to recreate the shame and guilt wheel.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
We should do the abdication of responsibility products. Right. That's where it's real. Right. The market is hot now. Because 2,000 years or 3,000 years or however many thousand years we've been building up the shame and guilt model.
Right.
We've got a big population of people who are looking for abdication of that guilt.
Right.
We've got it.
So that's a good one. Let's talk about the shame and the guilt and how that gets people stuck and keeps them stuck and then perpetuates stuckness.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Take it away.
Take it away.
What do you see?
Well, I actually have 3 rules for guilt. I teach this to my clients. Because a lot of people say things like, oh, well, I wasn't able to, do this for my kids, or I wasn't able to go to this party, or I was supposed to go to this thing for this friend. And I just didn't feel like going. I feel so guilty. I feel so bad. And I'm like, why? I mean, like, I just feel like, I should be doing more. I should be doing this, and I'm not doing enough. And all these not enough, not good enough messages. And so over the years, I've kind of, seeing this, I've come up with 3 simple rules for guilt, which is I tell people, please feel guilty if you're doing one of these 3 things. Okay, if you're doing something that's mean, please feel guilty. If you're doing something that's wrong, please feel guilty. If you're doing something that's just truly unfair, feel guilty. Mean, wrong, or unfair. We should feel guilty. Guilt is actually a good emotion that's designed to help good people feel bad when they're doing something wrong, and then they don't like that feeling, so they then try to correct the bad behavior, so then they can feel good again. Oh, okay, well, I made a mistake, learned from it, moved on, and now I'm feeling good again. That's what guilt is meant to do. I get frustrated sometimes when I work with people who try to, because they've had such bad experiences with guilt and shame, they try to get rid of all guilt. Well, that's called a sociopath. Sociopaths don't have guilt. Pointing to me, thank you. And so I always talk about the difference between guilt and shame. Guilt is a painful but useful emotion if it's used appropriately with those 3 categories, designed to correct behavior. Okay? Shame is its counterfeit cousin, okay, which the message with shame is not only did you do bad, you did bad because you are bad.
You are bad, right.
And this is where the stuckness that you always talk about comes into play. And since you are bad, that kind of implies you're bad to the core, and there's no real sense in you changing. Right. Because you're going to screw it up anyway. You're not good enough. You never have been good enough, and let's face it, you're never going to be good enough. So why even bother trying? And
what's so insidious is if that model is on an unconscious level, then what happens is we'll say, oh, I really want to improve over here, and then we end up over here over and over and over again.
Right, back in that stuck
because
place.
The shame is saying, yeah, great. You read the self-help books, do all you want, but this is your comfort zone over here.
Exactly, and so I help people separate out the difference between shame and guilt. Please feel guilty if you're doing something that's mean, wrong, and unfair, but if you're not doing something that's mean, wrong, or unfair, then my other rule is that you're not allowed to waste good guilt energy. Because the problem with guilt, even though it can be very useful when it's used in a healthy fashion, it is powerful. It's a powerful emotion, and it can take a lot from us, and it can require a lot from us emotionally. And so because it's so powerful, we don't want to waste it. We don't want to expend energy on it if it's not necessary. When people are always feeling guilty about everything, where they're not doing things that are mean, wrong, or unfair, maybe lots of times people are just doing things because I just don't feel like it. But they're actually not doing anything mean, wrong, or unfair. They're just actually operating off of something they're allowed to operate off of, which is a personal preference. But they think they have to sometimes, if you're a people pleaser, you're going to be racked with guilt all the time because you have to constantly be meeting other people's preferences or what you perceive as their preferences. And since you're not always doing that, and you do have sometimes these selfish feelings of wanting to do what matters to you, then you feel bad because you're guilty because you're being selfish, and then you get stuck again in misapplied guilt, which turns to shame. So healthy guilt is useful, can get us unstuck. It's designed to get us unstuck. Feel it, feel the pain, correct it, and move on. That's really what pain is designed for, right? If you think about physical pain, you touch the hot stove, it's a very unpleasant experience, but it's actually a good experience as far as a functional experience.
Right.
If you didn't feel pain when you touched the hot stove,
Right.
greater damage occurs.
Right.
So, and that pain helps you correct your behavior very quickly as you pull your hand away. And it allows you to also remember, oh, don't do that because that hurts.
Right.
Okay. So that's physical pain. Well, guilt causes that emotional pain. And if we use it the way it's meant to, then it's useful. If we don't, we get stuck. And so by separating this out, that helps. That's one way that helps people get unstuck. And so when I had people who are racked with inappropriate guilt, I just have them go, and the next session or down the road, they say, I was feeling so guilty about this, and I'll hear what they're saying, and it's like, doesn't meet the criteria. And I'll go, what are the criteria? Are you allowed to feel guilty about this? Yes or no? No, but I still do. I don't care if you still do. You have to stop it. You have to, at some point, not let your emotions drive and make a decision. Is this okay to feel this way, yes or no?
And then do you shame them out of their guilt?
I shame them. You failed again. Yeah. I've explained this to you at least 5 times, moron. Clearly, you're not smart enough to get it. Right. And that's the way that you really keep them stuck in therapy, which really is helpful for us financially. Then it keeps them coming back again and again. So you want to build them up a little bit that they feel that there's progress. So they'll keep coming back, right, and tell their friends. Right. But there's going to be a point if they make too much progress and get too unstuck. Right. What happens to our revenue stream?
It stops, and they get cocky.
And
that's bad for them.
They start thinking that they're changing on their own.
Right.
No. Dependency on me is really what I'm looking for as a therapist. So yeah, build them up, tear them down, build them up, tear them down, build them up, tear them down. That's what we do.
Just right. So last time after we were off the air, one of our callers asked, like...
Really?
Well,
okay, yeah.
It could have happened, or it might happen. Where's my certificate? I mean, stop it. We'll ask, okay, so I'm feeling inappropriate shame and guilt. How? That's what people want to know. I want to know how. How do I stop doing that? Okay. What are some methods that you use with your clients?
To get rid of the inappropriate shame and guilt?
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's one of the main ones right there, is just to identify it, call it what it is, put it in the right place. If it's guilt, fix it. If it's shame, let it go.
Okay. All right. So our 3 brains wrapped into one, the triune brain, brain stem, then the midbrain, and then cortex, prefrontal lobes. So when people come in and say, I'm having these feelings of shame and guilt, that's back in the old parts, the primitive parts of the brain.
Right.
And by you talking about it, that's bringing it up to the prefrontal lobes. So it's a mechanical step.
Yes.
And what I like about a mechanical step is there's no magic, and I don't know if I can do this or not. Yeah, I can. If I need to open the door, you just open the door.
You just do. And that's where people overcomplicate it a lot, right? They say, well, what do I need to do? Just do this thing.
Right.
And sometimes it's so simple, like you said, just open the door. Just speak the words. Just look at this piece of paper. The problem, I think, why that doesn't work a lot going with our 3 brains is emotionally, we don't believe it yet. Right. And so intellectually, we can get it on this part of our brain, but at our emotional brain, we don't get it because the message has been taught for so long that we're not good enough. We're so messed up that the answer couldn't be as simple. And plus, we, of course, are creatures of habit, so it takes a while to turn things around. And so when I start saying the right things or doing the right actions, it doesn't feel like it's going to work. So it feels like we're going to stay stuck again. And so, of course, what we teach from cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the idea of change your thinking, change your cognitions, change your behavior, actions, that will, in time and through repetition, create and change a different emotional experience. And then we get unstuck. And so the good news is, and that's where we just have to, I educate people a lot like you do on what's going on in the mechanics of our brain. There's nothing, this is just a technical thing. There's no magic to it. There's no voodoo. It's very predictable. You've done this in a lot of other areas of your life when you learned how to talk or walk or ride a bike or anything else you've gained proficiency at. It's just been a lot of repetition doing the same thing over and over correctly. A lot of these ways that are hurting you that with inappropriate shame or guilt is you've repeated those so many times, you're really, really good at shame.
Right.
So we have to repeat these non-shame messages really, really well until you get really good at that.
Okay. So another thing I like about this approach, it's you have to just get that. Well, it's the locomotive that we talked about in Siberia in winter. It's frozen to the tracks. You have to get the wheels broken free. The train doesn't have to go 100 miles an hour. It just has to have the wheels broken free so that it can move. And so by having them do something that's really simple, first off, they're thinking about it. And then when they start to talk about it, that's like that little first step. I learned this just a few years ago. If I would have figured this out when I was a kid, I probably would be like a studio drummer or something.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Because I would practice and sit down one day, just, okay, for 1 hour or 3 hours or whatever, I'm going to do just these rudiments. And then I'd come back the next day and I was actually worse.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't understand. And so then I go, well, forget that. And I'd put in a Ted Nugent 8-track tape and just have a lot of fun. But I didn't get that much better based on how much time I was sitting in the drum set.
Huh.
And then a few years ago, there was this Latin pattern. Latin stuff, for me anyway, is really difficult to play. And I took my watch off and put it up on the cymbal. And I said, okay, for 5 minutes, I'm just going to play this at a tempo that I can play it at. Uh-huh. And the goal was 5.
Yeah.
So I can count that.
Okay.
It wasn't, I'm not good enough, or this is too difficult, or there was nothing emotional about it. It was just a number. And I said, I'm just going to do this until I can learn to play it. I have no idea. I don't care if it takes 20 years. In about, I don't know, a little less than 2 weeks of sitting there, and it was just a mind game, really boring. All of a sudden, my body and my brain went, oh, that's how you do it. And all of a sudden, I could play it. And I went, oh, wow, that's how you do it. So nice. When people feel like they're not making progress, if they'll just keep doing it over and over, and if they'll set a number, for a lot of people, that really helps.
Yeah.
And then when I was teaching drum lessons, I tell my little drum students, okay, I want you to do this for 100,000 times.
Wow.
And they go, ugh. So first off, I'm pushing their comfort zone way out. Because if I said a minute a day, they might do it for 3 seconds twice a week.
Right.
So 100,000 times, and they go, oh. And then I'd say, it's not going to take that long, but give yourself that much freedom before you go into judgment. Because if you go into judgment, then you're going to get stuck.
Right.
And then you get to 100,000, you still can't play it. I know a neurologist, and I'll get you hooked up with him.
Okay.
Because they can't not improve if they do it over and over and over.
Right. And that's really, and it's so good for people to hear that it's just that simple. It's not a matter of whether I'm a good enough person, whether I have character flaws, whether I have personality trait issues, whether I've got this problem or that problem or this problem or that problem. It's just mechanics.
Right.
It's just doing the work. It's a lot of the cliches, which are very true.
Right.
You know, one day at a time, here a little, there a little.
Right.
The journey of 100 miles begins with one step. By an inch, it's a cinch. By a yard, it's hard. All these little things, they're cliches because they're true. They really do work. And I think one of the utilities with being therapists, it's not just that we're working on mental health issues or helping people, you know, work through their deep-seated problems, helping them process. There's all that stuff that's going on too, but really a lot of it's just coaching. It's just drop and give me another 20.
Right.
Run another lap. We do a lot of cheerleading. You can do this. A lot of, pep talks. You can do this. Hang in there. It's just keeping them going and show up again. Let's do the work again and show up again, and let's review what worked and what didn't work, and just show up again and just show up again and just show up again. And it will just start working. There's no magic to it. It's just letting the brain do what it does. That we have to, I always have to remind people, they get frustrated because they're not learning it fast enough. And I have to remind people, we are slow. That's another way to get unstuck, right? How do we get unstuck is change our thinking, right? And align our thinking, not just change our thinking, but align our thinking with reality of how things actually work. And we as human beings are slow. If you look at other creatures on the planet, the way we learn is slow. It takes us, my dog Pepper, who's in the room, she's a little border collie. She gave birth to 8 puppies when she was 2 years old.
Wow.
And
she's kind of slutty.
Well, she was out a hoeing. Yeah. And with the neighbor's dog, the bishop's dog, actually. So, the bishop's kids are always the problem children, aren't they? So she got knocked up. And
that's so funny.
A black lab, and this is before she was fixed. Obviously, we learned our lesson there. Okay. And but at 2 years old, in our bathroom on a dirty towel, she popped out 8 puppies, just like that. She'd never done it before. She didn't have a midwife. She didn't go to Lamaze classes. She didn't have an epidural. She didn't have a doctor. She had immediate built-in instinctual knowledge that kicked in when she needed it, and I always say it was the grossest, most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It was amazing. She was a champ. But as human beings, we're not, sexually mature enough to have children until our early teens, and emotionally usually not mature enough until we're much older.
Yeah, we're born about 20 years too early.
Yeah, seriously. And that's just, so we're slow to develop. We're also slow to learn because we learn through 2 mechanisms. We learn socially from other people. Monkey see, monkey do is our learning mechanism. We're not instinctual learners. We're social learners, and we learn through repetition. So learning socially is it takes time to transfer that data. Transferring it through language or modeling behavior takes time. It's not just a quick download. For Pepper to learn what she needed to do to give birth, there was an immediate data transfer from ancient, primal, evolutionary buildup of instincts and knowledge. We have to do the slow data transfer of modeling and repetition and practice. And so if we set that as our new expectation, which is really the oldest expectation, the only way that we learn is that way. And then when our clients aren't getting it, instead of them having to feel bad, then go, oh, well, I'm just not getting it yet. And so I teach my clients what I call the comma yet. Usually most people are as far as the programming of the mind, this is another one of those how do we get unstuck to your questions, is I teach them how to just use punctuation and word choice. All right.
This is good stuff.
Usually they will say, well, I'm just not getting it. And they end that sentence with a period. And now it's a final statement. It's a static statement, which means there's no change that can occur. Stuckness.
Right.
Whereas when I'm just not getting it, comma, yet, ... that tells the brain several things. Well, yeah, I'm not getting it, so I'm tuned in with reality. But that must mean if I'm not getting it yet, it means I'm just not getting it now.
Right.
But yet presupposes that I probably will.
Right.
I'm just not there yet. And then that means, well, then I must, and I can probably still work on this. If I'm the brain, if I'm stuck and I've got a final statement, then the message to the brain, the programming to the brain is there's nothing for you to do, brain. But if it's comma yet, the brain goes, well, the reality is we're not getting it yet, but we can. Well, then I wonder how we could. And then the brain starts getting creative and we start thinking about it, starts accessing resources, starts accessing natural resiliency, starts accessing latent smarts that sometimes we forget we have.
Thinks about buying a certificate.
Thinks about buying a certificate, $49.95.
That's right. HeavyMentalHour.com/.
I'm not bat crap crazy.
So what I like about that, the language, I hadn't thought of the punctuation, but it's the same idea. Someone will say, well, I'm not getting it. And it's like, be careful what you're telling yourself, because if you do it enough times, then your unconscious will believe it. Doesn't matter if it's true or not.
Doesn't matter.
And it will believe it, and then it will act out. That's that cliche, the self-fulfilling prophecy. It will act out in accordance with that core belief.
Right. Right. And that fits with what that's what I always tell my clients along with this, is that your brain doesn't care.
Right.
Whether you're happy or not. You care, I care that you're happy. Maybe parts of your brain care, but just basically this aspect of how it functions doesn't care. It will simply do its programmed. I always kind of use the example of a keyboard. If I want Q on my keyboard, but I keep pressing Y, the computer will only give me Y.
Yeah.
The computer really doesn't care what I want. It will just simply do as programmed. So if I want Q, I have to press Q only.
Right.
But people, but I don't believe that I'm good enough, or I don't believe that I can do this, or I've never been able to, therefore I can't, So I always remind people, well, you know what, that may be true in the past, but now doesn't predict your future, and we have to. And so a lot of it's just recalibrating the brain, recalibrating our thinking, called cognitive restructuring is the CBT, cognitive behavioral term, the psychobabble, but it's just reordering things, reprogramming, getting things lined up the way that our brains function. And again, this is where, as you and I frequently talk about, just the mechanics of it.
Mechanics, okay.
It's not about, there's no magic to this. It's just popping open the hood.
Right.
Let's take out the pieces that aren't working. Let's put in pieces that do. There's nothing wrong with you as a person. There's just some things that you've learned that really are non-functional. Let's remove those and let's put in the better parts. That's all.
Right. The mechanics. And one thing I love about this, can I draw something on here?
Yeah.
All right. This is, and I'll hold this up for our viewers. Okay. So.
He drew a box.
A box. Look at that.
Proud of you.
I haven't improved my
You're getting better, though.
Art skills since about kindergarten.
I remember you tried to do a box with 3 sides, and you've added the 4th. Look at you.
This is where I'm stuck. This is my block. And I am down here. Whoops.
Now, as you do this, if you can describe the location as you're doing things for the people who are listening to this.
Okay, so I've got a box in the middle of the page.
Okay.
At the very bottom, I have a line that's kind of headed toward the box that's in the center of the page. And then I have another little line near the top of the page above the box. So I'm down here at the bottom, but that block is getting in my way. So I'm stuck. I want to be up at the top, but I'm not. Rather than doing years and years of therapy, or, well, I've really got to work on this, and over and over and over. Already when I start to think like that, I just go, I'm going to go take a nap. I'm not going to change. Now, what I'm going to do from this bottom line, I'm going to draw, it's kind of a diamond shape. So now you have the box that's inside of the diamond. So you still have the little line at the top and at the bottom. There we go.
Okay.
Wow, that's just warped. I'm not a good artist, but the principle is a good one.
That's right. And you're not a good artist because you're not good enough. Not just in art, but as a human being.
I'm going to get an extra certificate on you. Okay. And so instead of going and drilling through the granite block, what if I can just go around it? Mm-hmm. All right. Now, this is exactly what you're talking about, changing your thoughts, changing your behavior. If you keep changing your behavior enough, then your thoughts will catch up and go, well, wait a minute, maybe I am good enough because, and then the box takes care of itself.
Yeah. Right. And that's really, it's so simple, we miss it. And part of it is because part of the problem is our profession. Okay. At least as we used to bounce around in the dark a lot in this profession, trying to figure out what to do, we learned different methods and models. Some that were good, some that were less effective. Well, there's some less effective models that are still very prevalent. And one of them is this idea that you have to go back and address every issue, every box, including everything that went wrong in your childhood, everything that you've done wrong. We need to fix all your bad patterns, all your bad behaviors, all your bad mindsets. We have to fix. And then something changed, interestingly, where we started looking at things very differently through when family therapy started coming around and innovative thinkers like Milton Erickson and then
one of our favorites.
Exactly. Then in the 80s when solution-focused therapy came out, and solution-focused therapy, where that was so interesting is it came out with a core premise, which was very, very counterintuitive to the prevailing wisdom of the time, that you have to really deal with your past, you really have to deal with the issues to solve the issues. Their core premise is that you don't need to know anything about the problem in order to solve the problem. You can actually circumvent, is what you're doing here around the block. You can go around the problem and still get to your destination, and then the problem, just like you said, takes care of itself. Right. Yeah. And so as I like to tell my clients is that the good news is we don't have to fix everything to fix everything. Right. We need to find a few core things to fix here or there, or different ways of doing things, and then those things take over. Right. Sometimes people think, well, you need to the way to take care of the weeds is to focus on the weeds. And what happens is they focus on the weeds. They're not just plucking the weeds. What they usually end up doing is they end up watering the weeds. Right, and throwing their seeds around. And so, right. And instead, what we do is we learn how to water what we want to grow to the point that the weeds get neglected. Right. And ignored. And a lot of people have a hard time ignoring the weeds. They have a hard time ignoring problems. They think, no, you have to fix the problem. Right, right. No, what happens is the more you water what you want to grow, right, it starts to build and grow and expand, and eventually it crowds out the weeds. By focusing on the solution rather than the problem goes away. So here's another idea that it's interesting, because you and I have come to the same conclusions in many areas, maybe from different paths, or maybe it's the same path. But what you just described, the image that I see and that I'll tell clients is there's this big umbrella and it's creating this shade. And so underneath the umbrella, you've got fungi and mushrooms, poisonous ones, and all of that stuff. And we can go through and try to kill all the bad stuff one at a time, which is like going back into your childhood and rehashing all of that. Yeah. Or we can figure out what the umbrella really is. What's the real issue going on? And then if you can get that out of the way, most of this other stuff just disappears. The sun comes in and goes, okay, we're going to just kind of dry you up. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And, one of the examples that kind of started this whole way of thinking, I mentioned Milton Erickson, one of our favorites. You guys, some of you may not know who Milton Erickson was. He was, I don't know, what time frame did he live in? The 50s? 40s? Maybe so. I can't remember. Probably 50s. But he was a renowned psychiatrist, and he was known for really getting people unstuck, but in a rapid 1 or 2, 3 or 4 session manner. Unconventional, because back then you'd be in psychoanalytic therapy, right? Basically, the classic Freudian thing where
Three
you're lying on the
times a
couch
week.
3 times a week. You're on the couch. The therapist is behind you with the notepad.
Asleep,
right? You're looking at ink blots. You're doing free association. You're talking about your mother and all this stuff. And people would be in therapy for years. I actually had a client once. We were talking about this when I worked up in Park City. And we were kind of talking about the therapeutic couch. And I said, I've never actually, people always come in and ask me, hey, where's the couch? And I said, I actually don't know any therapist who actually has a couch like that anymore. He said, well, I do. I said, really? I said, yeah, I used to live in New York, and I went to a psychoanalyst who did that. And I, really? No kidding. I actually don't know any psychoanalysts myself. And he said, yeah, I went and I laid on his couch for 3 years, once a week, $300 an hour. Really, no kidding.
Wow.
Was that helpful? Not so much.
Yeah.
And
you would have been better off to use that money for like illegal drugs.
Right. And here I was working at
Could have felt a lot better.
a lot better, a lot quicker.
Yeah.
And here I was working at a community mental health agency, making a pittance of a salary. And I'm thinking, and he's getting really good results and really good outcomes and saying things like, well, I got more out of this hour than I got out of weeks of therapy. I'm like, well, geez, why am I not getting that kind of money? He's got some scam going on there. But anyway, so Milton Erickson, he would, I think one of the very first times when you and I talked about him, we talked about the pee pipe.
Right.
So he had
you told me that story. Yes.
So he had a client who was referred to him, this kid.
Hang on just a second. Sorry. Go back and tell the story about how Erickson, the cow in the barn, and his dad.
Well, I don't remember that one.
This is how it got started.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
No. Yeah.
So Erickson, I guess, was like a teenager, something like that, or maybe a little bit younger. And the father's trying to get the cow into the barn and pulling, and said, son, help me, come and pull. And Erickson, the junior, said, well, hang on a minute. And he ran behind the cow and grabbed the cow's tail. And the dad said, what are you doing? And he said, I know what I'm doing. And he pulled the tail. Well, the cow didn't like that, so the cow voluntarily walked forward.
Oh, right.
So with the psychoanalytic theory, we have to go back to your childhood. That's all that pulling. And Erickson comes around and does just the opposite, and boom, people get unstuck. Okay.
Right.
So the pee pipe.
Great setup. Yeah. I'd totally forgotten about that story. And sometimes doing what I always tell my clients is that hopefully some of the things we're doing here won't jive with you. Hopefully some of it, if we're doing it correctly, will frustrate you, will actually be counterintuitive or seem counterintuitive. Because we're used to spending most of our lives pulling instead of doing something very opposite that works more effective. So anyway, this kid was referred to him, this adolescent or young, I think it was a young, like some kid in his 20s, was referred to Erickson because he had this intractable stuck problem. He'd been to other therapists and things weren't working, doctors and whatnot. And his problem was that he had this compulsion, this obsessive compulsion where the only way he could urinate was through a 12-inch long metal pipe. And I don't remember how it started. Erickson wasn't really curious about how it started. He didn't really care because, again, his mind says you don't need to know anything about the problem in order to solve it. And all kinds of things had been tried and whatnot with other therapists.
Right.
And
so what would happen normally? Tell me about your mother or your father or the first time, and then you go on and on and on.
How did this begin? And, all that.
All that. And then as a consumer, because I've been to therapists like that, I walk out of there and I feel worse because I don't know what I got.
Well, you didn't actually get anything of real value to do, but you did get more awareness of how screwed up you are.
Right.
And if you're really, not only am I screwed up, I've been screwed up for this long and to this depth.
Right.
And now I have a lot of psychobabble jargon going on in my head that explains how screwed up I am, but there's still no path out of it.
Right.
Now I feel worse. It's because now even if I have some understanding, I don't know how to get out of it, and it feels like now it's going to take forever. If I've got this many more problems, it's going to take this much more time to fix.
And how much more money, and you're right, more and more stuff.
Time and energy, and do I have the will or emotional fortitude in the midst of my depression or anxiety to actually face these issues? Oh my gosh, it's a Herculean effort at that point.
Right.
And it gets very impossible and increases the stuckness. So therapists, if they're not as skilled, handsome, and charming as we are,
with certificates,
which
most of them don't have.
HeavyMentalHour.com / give us money. If they're not as fantastic as we are, they're going to screw up their clients.
Yeah.
Right. So our message to you is don't trust your therapist. Come see one of us. We'll really piss off a lot of our colleagues. That's one of our goals today.
Yeah.
So anyway, without finding out any of the history of this kid, I think it was a pretty short session, and he just said to him, "Well, do you have the pipe with you?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, okay, well, let's go out to the garage or whatever, and got a hacksaw, and they cut off 1 inch of the pipe, and he returned the pipe back to him. And said, come back and see me next week. So he comes back and sees him, and they have a real short session, and he says, well, I'm still peeing through the pipe. And Erickson goes, all right, let's cut off another inch of that pipe, see if that helps. And he goes back and comes back, and they do this. And I think they're just like 5-10 minute check-ins, And and he said, would you mind, I don't really have time. Would you mind just, cutting the pipe yourself just once a week? And then, but make sure you come back and let me know how it's going. And so he's doing this, and so he has to carry this pee pipe around everywhere he goes, and he's still urinating through it. He still has the exact same problem. Nothing's solved. He's not working through any of his issues anymore, but his pipe just keeps getting shorter. And then he comes back, and he says, Doc, I'm cured. He goes, well, what happened? He says, well, I got down where there was only 1 inch left, and I'm holding this thing as I'm urinating through it. There's this 1 inch piece of pipe, and I look down at it, and I go, this is ridiculous. I'm only peeing through 1 inch of pipe. I just threw it away. And that was it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And no issues were addressed. They just kept shortening the pipe until there was no pipe.
Right.
And it didn't serve whatever purpose it was serving for him.
Right.
To pee through a pipe. Of course, there was some psychological issue going on. Definitely. But what it was and what purpose it was serving, after a while, it stopped serving. And so, yes, Gary's holding up the picture where instead of trying to deal with the block and drill through the block of granite, he just circumvented completely.
Right.
Pulled the cow's tail.
Right.
Cut the pee pipe.
And then from what I understand, Erickson told the guy, you realize that your penis is a tube and you've been urinating through a tube the whole time.
I forgot about that part. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Oh, wow. I love that stuff. And then if we look at how to get unstuck, the first thing Erickson did is have him cut 1 inch off. So that's forward movement.
Okay.
So that's telling the old parts of the brain, well, maybe there is a way out. And then the guy's coming back saying, I'm not getting any better. And that's the discipline part where it gets kind of boring. You just have to do it over and over and over.
Just the repetition.
But you're still moving forward. And then something inside the guy's psyche just went, this is ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. And then he was just done.
Right.
And that's the fun thing about it. And people oftentimes say, gosh, I couldn't do what you do as a therapist. Oh, well, why is that? I know the answer. Oh, it's just listen to people complain and whine and bitch and moan, and it's just so depressing.
It's not like that.
And I said, well, yeah, that would be really depressing. I'm glad I don't do that. We stuff like this that we do. And not only do we get to see people change and have the benefit from that, we get to see we're not really, because we look at people this way, we don't see them as screwed up. We see them as, hey, these people are humble enough to come in and talk to a complete stranger.
Right.
And try something different. Now, how do you not respect humility and motivation like that? Even if you don't know if it's going to work, you're still willing to try.
Right.
How do you not respect tenacity as a character trait? These people think they have no strengths. When they walk through our door, we're already seeing them as having strengths.
Right.
And that's what we get to leverage. We're not seeing them as shame-based creatures. We're seeing them as they probably have resilience. They just don't know about it.
Right.
They probably have all kinds of strengths. They're probably changing in ways they're not even aware that they're doing yet. We're just going to help show them to that more.
Our former boss, Marilee, would say, because I would say, Marilee, you're so good at this. You're just so dialed in. How did you learn all this stuff? And she'd say, well, really all I do is just I hold up a mirror for people to look at and see the strengths that were always there. They just didn't know it.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's also a liar because she's really humble because she's really just really good at it.
Right,
too.
right.
No, but it is. I've used that same line, and I've heard her saying that, in the past, and it is really true. It's sometimes people just need to see what they've, because of the shame or the stuckness, they just can't see anymore.
And as soon as they see, even if it's just a little glimpse, then the train wheels have become unstuck, so it can start to move forward. And it doesn't have to take off at 100 miles an hour. It has to be able to take off. And then the mechanics of the brain function switch.
Right. So true.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good.
Let's see. What else?
Well, one thing that you were mentioning earlier when you were asking, how do we get unstuck? We've covered a lot of ground on that. One other area, going back into, we talked about some of the beliefs. One of the beliefs that I like to challenge is to clarify the difference between at least to me, what is different between self-worth and self-esteem.
Okay.
Those are two terms we tend to use pretty synonymously. But to me, I see them very different. And so I'll write this out on a chart with clients. I'll just draw a teeter-totter with a little pyramid in the middle for the balance, the fulcrum point. And on one side, I'll write self-esteem, and the other side will be self-worth. And this is important by identifying the difference between this. You can go into that deep core of belief, sense of how you see yourself. If you're a shame-based creature, this is a way to kind of unlock that shame. You know, so you have some of these ways of getting around the block. One of the ways is just to really, or the stuckness, is to just really clarify what is my worth and what is esteem and how is it different. So esteem is based in doing, worth is based in being. And in doing, and the research on self-esteem is really interesting. There was this idea for, you know,
please, no calls or emails during the broadcast.
All our many listeners.
Yeah.
Hang in there.
Thanks, Mom.
There's this idea, you know, for a long, and we still see it a lot, where people are every kid's getting a trophy for participating in everything. We tell kids that aren't accomplishing things, you're doing great, you're a great kid, you're so wonderful, you're fantastic. And the research is starting to show that the more you tell a kid who's not performing how great they're doing, it lowers their self-esteem.
Right.
Because they're not stupid. And they can look around and go, oh, well, Tommy, who's actually getting a 4.0 and actually works really hard and has a good positive attitude and plays sports or works hard and helps his family, he's told he's great. I sit around on my butt, get bad grades, have a bad attitude, do nothing to contribute anywhere, and whine and complain, and they tell me I'm great. Either they're stupid or they think I'm stupid. And it's just pandering. It just makes people feel bad.
And if the kid happens to believe it, I know in education they've switched from saying, oh, you're gifted, you're so talented, that those kids oftentimes do really bad in life or do poorly because maybe they are gifted at one thing and then they go to the next thing and it doesn't come easily at all, and then they give up.
Right. So they feel bad again. So their esteem, their ability to do has been damaged.
So they tell them, wow, you really work hard. You're a hard worker, because that's not me being talented or not, because I could be stuck. Oh, I can work because that's the mechanics. I could do that. Oh, and I am improving.
Right. Excellent. So that fits with esteem based on doing. So esteem is earned through accomplishment, achieving, through overcoming, through hard work, through struggle. And so esteem is something that we have a lot of control over. And we can change it. It can rise and fall. It can rise and fall based on our own actions or interactions. It can also happen because of life circumstances. Maybe you see this sometimes with maybe a man who's worked his whole life, has taken a lot of pride in his ability to work hard, you know, and has accomplished a lot of things. And then he either retires or gets into a bad accident and isn't able to provide anymore. And his esteem and resultant depression just goes tanks because he's not able to do anymore. And there's nothing to counterbalance that. And since most people are putting self-worth and self-esteem into one bucket, it's all doing. Then when doing is gone, then there's nothing there balancing.
Then who am I? What am I?
Whereas self-worth is based in being. We need both, being and doing. But the being part is inherent. We can't add or subtract to our worth.
I'm seeing another certificate.
Yes?
A self-esteem certificate.
Nice. What would we say?
Well, just validate that they do have value, but it's going to cost more.
Oh,
I think quite a bit more. Anyway, continue.
What's a good price point?
I
$89.95
or more.
Or more.
Yeah.
$999.
Even though I sat around and did nothing all day other than play video games, Mom, I'm worthwhile.
Right.
Take a look
See
at
the
that.
certificate?
Right.
Look what I've accomplished.
And we could make them bigger, even just a little bit bigger.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, because a larger certificate means more.
Right. There's the proof. So I like that differentiation.
Yeah.
And then the doing. Here's something my mother talks a lot about kids. She always refers to their self-esteem. Well, that's not good for their self-esteem or whatever. And once again, when we go do something and our self-esteem goes up, all that's really happened is our brain chemistry changed. So it's mechanical.
Right.
So if I'm feeling poorly, and I'm probably going to feel stuck if I haven't done very much that day, and I might go, oh, I'm just kind of lazy. But if I go, oh, wait a minute, it's just brain chemistry. I don't want to feel this way. What do I need to do? I need to go do something, maybe around the house or for work or do something for someone else. That will change my brain chemistry. And that's very doable.
Right. I can do that because it's not something wrong with me.
Right.
It's just filling up the tank.
Right.
It's just taking care of the machinery.
Right. Yeah. It's that simple, usually.
Right. And so to continue with the self-worth, a couple other aspects of that is, so it's inherent. We can't add to or subtract from it, but there is one thing we can do with self-esteem, with self-worth, is all we can do with it is we can recognize it, we can value it, we can appreciate it. And so, for example, the example I give is, say I have a big diamond ring, okay? And it has, now a diamond just has worth because it's a diamond. Does it have to do anything to have worth?
It does not.
It just exists. Because it's a diamond, it has great value. Now, let's say I'm out working in the field and the diamond pops out and I lose it and a cow comes by and poops on it and it's lost for 50 years. And that whole time that it's covered with crap and lost and nobody can see it and recognize its value or enjoy it, has it lost any of its worth?
It has not.
It is still fully inherent. It's fully there. So all we can do is find it, uncover it, look at it, clean it up, enjoy it, but we can't change it. And so that's crucial that we do. And some people, they go, well, I don't feel that I have worth. Well, I don't really care whether you feel it. It's not. There's nothing you can do. Whether you feel a diamond has value or not, all you can do is recognize whether it does. So if you hand a diamond to somebody who doesn't know anything about jewelry or doesn't know what a diamond is, or you give it to a pig and let it rut around in the mud, that's the wrong people to give it to. You want to take a diamond to a jeweler who can assess its value and really appreciate it for what it is, show it off, and describe its value, but we can't change the diamond. So some people, we can find out what their worth is based on a few things. Some people might have a spiritual belief, right, where they believe that they're divine, that they're a child of God or the universe, or have a heavenly parents or whatever it is, and realign them to their core belief. Because a lot of times people will have a core belief like that, like I'm a child of God or something, but they don't actually act according to that belief. Let's say, well, how many kids do you talk to the way that you talk to how many other people do you talk to that way? Right. So we have an unintentional hypocrisy going on, where it's okay to talk to other people kindly and respectfully with compassion, forgiveness, understanding, but with myself, I have to beat myself up. Right. Well, when there's something of great worth, you don't beat that up. But another way of looking at it, not from a spiritual perspective, but just a rarity perspective. Diamonds are valued because of their rarity. Well, they feel like, well, I'm not very rare because I'm one of 7 billion people. Big whoop-de-doo. Well, generally, most people believe that human life has worth.
Do you ever just tell them, oh, yeah, you're right?
When you put it that way, you really aren't worth much. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's going to save us a lot of time here in therapy.
Get the credit card first. Yeah. Okay, so go on. Because I want to hear.
Do you have any friends who actually have any worth I could work with? Because you're right, you really suck. You worthless piece of crap.
So I want to hear sorry for the interruption. Yeah. But I want to hear.
I'm sorry for it too.
What you do.
So with that, so I'll really clarify. Well, let's just look at this from the wonders of science. Okay. Now, while 1 out of 7 billion isn't that impressive, true. We live on this one planet, in this one solar system, and this one spiral arm of our galaxy. And our sun is pretty average. It's not that big of a deal as far as suns and stars go in the universe, and even our own galaxy. And our galaxy is actually pretty unimpressive galaxy compared to other galaxies out there as far as size and scope. It's just kind of a average sized galaxy. That being said, we know that in our own galaxy, there are billions and billions of stars just in this galaxy. In our known universe, there are billions and billions of galaxies.
Right.
So now we're looking at sheer scope here.
Right.
And so far, now we can make an assumption that there's probably other life, and it's a safe assumption, but we haven't gotten to where we've been able to find it. So NASA and scientists, physicists, astrophysicists, we're all really excited about the idea of what they're doing at the Mars rover and things like that, and hoping to find life. Any life, even bacterial life, is mind-blowingly, amazingly cool.
Right. Came from somewhere.
Right. Just that will be so amazing. A piece of bacteria. When's the last time you've been excited about bacteria, by the way?
Boy.
Yeah. Okay, so, but here on this little blue ball, our little planet here, we have more species that have gone extinct than currently live.
Right.
We have more species that haven't even been discovered yet, especially in the oceans, that we don't even know about yet.
Right.
And we have it's not that life is hard to find. Life here is incredibly abundant, but according to the rest of our solar system and other areas that we've been able to explore yet, it's so incredibly rare.
Right.
That you're one of 7 billion is actually incredibly rare.
Right.
according to everywhere else we know
According
yet.
to what we know, we're the only game in town.
Yeah.
And if there is life out there somewhere else, bet you anything they don't have digitally remastered Led Zeppelin.
They sure as heck don't have that.
Take that.
So screw you, aliens.
Space monsters, scum. Yeah.
Dang Skippy.
So once again, the mechanics. Someone says, "Oh, well, I don't feel like I have any self-worth." That's from the primitive part of the brain.
Right.
And then you're getting them to talk about astronomy or think about it. And that's shifting from back here to the front of the brain. And then that changes their brain chemistry. And you keep doing that
over and
over again. And then when you go, yeah, but, and then you make yourself stop that because we're re-engaging the old parts of the brain and we want to keep it.
Thought-stopping technique.
Thought-stopping technique. Yeah.
Stop the old thinking.
Yeah, or like hit yourself in the head with a P-tube or something like that.
We could sell the P-tube online. I've got a bunch of old PVC pipe in the garage.
I'm liking this. And we could do Milton
Erickson's
signature.
$10 a piece. $25.
25, yeah.
Yeah, and if you want, we'll for an extra $10, we'll throw in a saw.
And a saw. Oh, I'm liking that.
Ericksonian pea saw.
Yeah, and it will come with a handy wipe or something just in case you're not a good aim. Yeah, or did you just add-ons?
A whole kit.
Add-ons. Yeah, kit. I'm liking
you can get them separately or as a kit.
Right. An action figure. Oh
man, we can really sell a lot of crap through this medium of the podcast.
Wouldn't that just be
so excited?
Wouldn't it be so funny if someone ever?
I hope our listeners are really stupid.
Our listener.
Sorry, Mom.
Wouldn't it be funny if anyone actually watched this? Said,
everybody has the fortitude to actually sit through an hour of this.
Right.
They should get a certificate.
I
watched a full episode of the Heavy Mental Hour.
I like that.
All by myself. Glutton for punishment certificate.
Oh, okay. We need to just work out something just in case someone doesn't realize that we're not just making part of it up. And they send us some money.
Well, what certificate is this?
A kit. The kit. I'm really liking that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is good. I'm feeling pretty unstuck. How about you?
I am too.
Anything else you want to add to the stuckness conversation?
I need to go find a tube. Can I borrow?
I've got one.
Yours?
Oh, no.
No.
You can buy one, though. All right. Well, thanks a lot, everybody, for joining us here for the Heavy Mental Hour and our discussion on stuckness. Stay tuned for a couple silly outtakes for you at the end. That's it for this week. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow, share a quick rating, and review. It takes like 30 seconds, and I read all of them. It means a lot to me, and it really helps us reach a larger audience. Also, 2 things. 1, remember to visit relategreat.net/podcast to get the resources referenced in this episode. And 2, to start taking the 7 Principles for Building Strong Families online masterclass and workbook to strengthen your family. Doing so supports both this podcast and, more importantly, it supports you in building your family even stronger than it already is. Remember, Relate Great podcast listeners save 20% with promo code STRONG20. Get the book, take the class, and start today. Original music for this podcast by my friend, Gary Pilcher. Thanks so much for listening. I'll catch you next time on Relate Great with Jonathan Sherman and friends.
So why would someone pay $39.95? It's maybe because they're feeling stuck. And they
that's a nice time.
And they get their certificate, and all of a sudden, hey, I'm not stuck anymore. Now I can go out and really be an asshole and not feel guilty.
That's fantastic. I went to therapy and all I got was this lousy P-tube. I don't know.
Oh, I like that.